This week on Jerusalem Dateline, another attack on shipping in the Persian Gulf raises the stakes between the U.S. and Iran. Plus, CBN News gets a rare look inside the biggest Hezbollah terror tunnel uncovered by the IDF.
You can see the wind shear on the wall over there, electricity, communications, lighting.
And a look at what some are calling the miracle of how the Sea of Galilee is being restored. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. Tensions between the U.S. and Iran are heightened as the Islamic Republic appears poised to break its nuclear deal with Europe. And after officials say the regime attached bombs to oil tankers in the Gulf of Oman. As CBN's Jennifer Wishon explains, U.S. officials say they have the evidence to prove it.
Here it is. Pentagon officials say this video captured by Navy surveillance proves Iran is behind the explosions that rocked two oil tankers in the Middle East Thursday. The footage, officials say, shows Iran's Revolutionary Guard pulling alongside a targeted ship to remove evidence, an unexploded limpet mine attached to the ship's hull by a magnet. The attacks are similar to those officials say Iran carried out in May against 4 commercial ships in the region. This time, Japanese and Norwegian-owned oil tankers were the targets. One ship burned for hours and is at risk of sinking. The USS Bainbridge rushed in to help, and now another destroyer, the USS Mason, is en route to provide backup. Iran denies responsibility, calling it an unfounded claim in America's Iranophobic campaign. But Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says the intelligence is clear. He accuses Iran of lashing out because it wants the Trump administration's crippling economic sanctions lifted. But he says that's no excuse. And now Iran is just weeks away from resuming enriching uranium closer to weapons-grade levels if European leaders don't offer new terms to the deal.
There are elements within the Iranian regime that do not want the U.S. and Iran to ever come to a bargaining table.
The Islamic Republic says it's already quadrupled its production of low-enriched uranium. But U.S. sanctions have cut off Iran's ability to trade its excess uranium and heavy water abroad, putting a desperate Tehran on course to violate its terms of the nuclear deal. Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, Washington.
Iran is not only active in the Persian Gulf, but the chief funder of the Islamic terror group Hezbollah inside Lebanon. It's well known that Hezbollah has more than 120,000 missiles pointed at Israel. But a less visible weapon with dangerous potential is a network of attack tunnels running underneath the northern border. Israel just discovered one of the most significant tunnels to date, and they took CBN News for a rare look inside. This is Zarit, a small agricultural community of 250 residents on the Israel-Lebanon border. Above ground, it's quiet and peaceful, but underground, Hezbollah was planning for death and destruction. We're standing in the tunnel right now and just a few feet from the Lebanese border. This tunnel is called Ramia, named after the village where the tunnel began. It was the most difficult for the IDF to discover. It's also the longest and the deepest, the equivalent of a 22-story building built underground.
You can see the wind shear on the wall over there, electricity, communications, lighting, and there's a phone that was actually connected for the first day when we exposed the tunnel. The wire was still live. One of our guys jokingly picked it up and asked for anybody to answer on the other side. There was no answer.
The workmanship you see here is all done by Hezbollah. This tunnel took years to construct and millions of dollars to build, much of it supplied by Iran.
You can see the remains of a rail system that Hezbollah had in place, which is what they used in order to bring equipment up, basically, and also to take all of the debris and rocks and shift it out of the tunnel. This would attach to an electric drill, power drill, that would drill like this, and once it got to the end of the cup itself, they would just pull it out, knock the piece of rock off, and then shift that piece of rock back.
The size of this tunnel is impressive. It's large enough where hundreds of Hezbollah commandos could have come into Israel with the goal to kidnap or kill.
Where we're standing now, you can see behind me, is the last and the highest point that this Hezbollah tunnel got. As you can see, it's only a few meters from ground level.
This is the entrance Israel opened into the tunnel. IDF spokesman Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus told us the tunnel runs almost a mile long and was nearly operational.
Operational in the sense of Hezbollah actually having the ability to break out and then to run to the nearest Israeli community. There are two communities here nearby, less than 6 minutes running distance from where we are now.
Tunnel warfare expert Daphne Richmond Barak says the value of this type of warfare is priceless for Hezbollah.
The potential reward is a major one if only it succeeds, because it neutralizes the technological advantage of the Israeli army.
For now, Conricus believes they have found and rendered all the border tunnels useless, either by destroying or filling them with cement.
That doesn't mean that we have, even for 1 second, let down our guard and have stopped looking.
In the meantime, this massive tunnel represents the persistent determination of Hezbollah to destroy Israel and the IDF's vigilance to stop one of Israel's greatest enemies. Iran not only funds attack tunnels like this one uncovered by the IDF, but is one of the worst persecutors of Christians in the world. In fact, acts of both anti-Semitism and Christian persecution are rising around the world. And now a new organization plans to challenge the church to confront these acts of hate. From synagogue shootings in the United States to Christians imprisoned in Iran or China, Jews and Christians are under assault in today's world.
You mostly have Jewish organizations fighting anti-Semitism, and then you have Christian groups that are fighting the persecution of Christians. And I always felt that there was a connection between the two, that there's something that Jews and Christians have in common, and that makes us targets of hatred.
Hoping to bring the two forces together, Suzanne Kokkonen has launched Hope for Persecuted Peoples. For 10 years, she directed Christian Friends of Yad Vashem, Israel's Holocaust memorial.
And now she's had the opportunity to break out of Yad Vashem and to bring the message of Yad Vashem all over the world.
So this initiative really is about both fighting anti-Semitism with education, but then also asking the church to look at the persecuted Christians. What are we supposed to be doing at this time?
Kokkonen believes the church in the West has become too comfortable.
This has made us like sleeping beauties. At the same time in Africa, Asia, Middle East, and now Asia is especially rising as a major persecutor of Christians, and we have more or less ignored the suffering of these people. So it's kind of a divided church also in that way.
And the Jewish organizations are reminding the church about the persecution of the Christians around the world. And the Christian agencies and ministries are much more silent. And I don't think this is right.
Kokkonen sees a solution by combining prayer and action.
Prayer is the number one, but then also all of these governments that allow the persecution, they certainly are trading with us, and we should be influencing our parliaments, our politicians, our nations to take a stand for these persecuted people.
The launch brought together Christians and Jewish leaders.
It's a new day. We saw it the last 10 to 15 years. I think it's beautiful to see Jews and Christians coming together for a noble cause.
And I think that's a common mission for us, Jews and Christians, and that's what we want to actually launch here today.
Kokkonen also calls on the church to prepare and pray against the likely increase of persecution in the West. Up next, some are calling it a miracle, the Sea of Galilee on the rise.
Prayers has been answered. Hallelujah.
Just 6 months ago, the Sea of Galilee was in trouble due to years of little rain and drought-like conditions. While this ancient body of water isn't out of danger, a rainy winter has helped bring relief. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl has that story.
For years, the Sea of Galilee has been shrinking. But then this past winter delivered a pleasant surprise to the biblical lake. I'm standing near the shores of the Sea of Galilee. Just 6 months ago, after years of low rainfall, the tourist boats could only dock at the far end of the pier. But now, after this winter's heavy rainfall, things are looking up.
A miracle. We have a lot of rain and snow that come to the Hermon mountain, and usually we have about 350 millimeters of rain. This year we have more than 600 millimeters. It was a shock to the water in Israel.
The last time the Sea of Galilee, or Kinneret as it's referenced in the Old Testament, was full was in 2008, and before that, 1996. In November, we visited Kibbutz Ginosar, and the water level looked like this. Now it looks like this.
Every time we arrive to the dangerous point, somebody do something for us.
Streams like this one that feed the Kinneret are brimming with water. These trees were on the banks of the lake for years. Now they're underwater. Daniel Carmel runs the worship boats. He said in November they could hardly dock here.
They don't know it. They don't know how is the Sea of Galilee when it's full. This is the lowest that I ever saw. 25 years that I'm here, this is the lowest.
Now Joseph Gina from the Francis Jordan sailing ship says things have changed.
This year it's very, very good. Thank God for this. Okay, this is a miracle, by the way. This year it's a lot of raining. So the level in the Sea of Galilee, it's come up very, very good.
While the water level rose about 12 feet this year, at the end of the rainy season, it's 7 feet from being full.
If we would have had a droughted year, a 6th droughted year, then the situation would be very, very bad.
Uri Shor is with Israel's water authority.
The rain also fell exactly on the right places from the water sources point of view. That's also very important. And the spread of water, the spread of rainfall was very good as well. That's why you can see the streams run fluently and nicely, and the levels of the water sources are rising nicely.
Each summer, the water level goes down by 4 to 5 feet just from evaporation. And so far, this summer's temperatures have been extremely high. Over the last 30 years, rainfall has continuously dropped, while the region is using more water than ever.
In Israel, the consumption of water is much higher than the quantity of rainfall that we get not only in the Sea of Galilee, but also in other water sources. Therefore, we are in a deficit every year.
And Israel is not alone. That's where technology comes in. For example, Israel has recycled sewage water and desalinated seawater for years. Shor says without that, Israel would not have the water it needs. While the winter rain delivered a much-needed miracle, the Sea of Galilee is clearly not out of danger. Last fall, Carmel asked people to pray.
Prayers has been answered. Hallelujah.
As people here and around the world pray for this key body of water, Israel is doing what it can to make new water sources and preserve this unique biblical lake. Julie Stahl, CBN News, the Sea of Galilee.
Coming up, President Trump recognized Israeli sovereignty on the Golan Heights. Now others hope Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria are next. U.S. President Donald Trump recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he would do the same over Jewish communities in Judea and Samaria, also known as the West Bank. It's a movement gaining support among some Jewish groups and even some Christians. We talked with Anthony Abma of Return, O Israel, an organization whose goal is to mobilize Christian support for full Jewish sovereignty in Israel. Well, Anthony, great to have you here on Jerusalem Dateline. Welcome. Sovereignty has been an issue in the news lately. President Trump recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. The U.S. Ambassador David Friedman talked about annexing Jewish communities in the West Bank, Judea and Samaria. Tell us, why is sovereignty such a hot topic right now?
Jewish sovereignty is connected to Jewish restoration. And so we've seen Israel come back, the diaspora. They've been a nation declared in 1948, but we've had this 71-year hiatus. It's a time and a season that we see God is making a move, and people are recognizing it, and I really think that this is what we've all been waiting for, Jew and Christian alike, because it's going to lead to redemption.
So when you talk about sovereignty, you wanting Jewish control over the biblical heartland of Israel. We're talking about Judea and Samaria.
Sovereignty means all of Israel, Eretz Israel, and that's what God promised to the people of Israel. And even though it's a bit bigger, but at least now the Golan to the Red Sea, from the Jordan to the Mediterranean. And two, we must remember that because of Torah, because of God's word to the Jewish people, they are a people that respect others, indigenous people in their nation. However, the problem has been that when you have some neighbors, as it were, that's in your territory that don't want to respect you, that's where the tension rises. But I've even spoken with Arab people that recognize that they will have a better life under Israeli full sovereignty than they would in some of the other Middle East Arab countries.
Why do you think Christians should be supporting Israeli and Jewish sovereignty?
Well, Chris, this is a subject that has been part of eschatology for Christians for centuries, millennia. We can see where the attempts of forcing Jewish conversion has resulted in a lot of contention, a lot of misunderstandings. And yet, at the same token, we also recognize that if we have a Judeo-Christian foundation in the Torah, in the Bible, that speaks unequivocally of God's irrevocable promises and covenants to Israel, we have an interest in that. Like Corrie ten Boom said, if you're going to be a Christian, you have to love Israel. I believe that we as Christians, we could mature, we could show some patience, some love, and say, this is what's before us. This is an irrevocable, undeniable miracle that happened in 1948 and even before and on the way through. And here we are, and we have an opportunity to actually lay down some of our differences, and let's let God fulfill His plan of redemption, and let us support the battle that's going on in Israel right now for Jewish sovereignty. Because I think you might realize too that some of the contention in Israel for sovereignty is between Jew and Jew.
Tell us what kind of reaction you've had from Christians and Jews, and what's the bottom line going forward?
Well, it's a bit mixed, but overall, when Jews find out that there's actually Christians that love Israel to the point that they are willing to help them and support them, it's very, very favorable. And the more and more Christians I talk to, they're beginning to realize that, yeah, you know what? That's got a truth ring to it. I want to know more about it. And so that's why we're endeavoring to do what we can to help Christians understand sovereignty through Return, O Israel.
And going forward, what do you see?
I see biblical promises being fulfilled. I see redemption on the horizon. I see a recognition that Israel has the right to be a sovereign state, biblically, like God promised to them, like every other nation in the world has got a right to sovereign territory.
Well, Anthony, thanks for joining us and sharing this unique and very timely perspective. Still ahead, see how this organization is changing the world for the disabled. For millions of disabled people around the world, simple tasks like playing a musical instrument or going to the gym are out of reach. But one organization is determined to provide real-life solutions to their daily challenges. Take a look. Joseph Abramson just received a gift not available in any store. 5 years ago, a war injury left him unable to play the musical instruments he loves.
These really special people here behind me have been working really, really hard for 3 days to develop a very cool kind of gadget that will help me play guitar better again, help me play drums again, and looks like it's going to work. So we're very, very excited and very, very thankful.
Abramson received a special gift at the event, Makers for Heroes. It's all part of the global mission of Tikkun Olam Makers, or TOM for short, to help the disabled.
We launched TOM inspired by a bold vision that called for the State of Israel and Jewish communities around the world to collaborate in helping 250 million people within a decade. in all continents of the world, all countries, all cities, all religions, and all cultures.
At Tom, engineers, programmers, and product designers create solutions to help wounded veterans, like 34-year-old Dror Zuckerman. He needed a special brace to help with weightlifting.
This is the brace. Also have here the logo, and this is the rubber. This is how it functions. I put it on my leg like this.
Tom partners with local organizations like Restart in Israel.
Restart's vision is to have every wounded soldier should be back to normal life and integrated into society. And Tom's vision is to take everything that was done here and take it to all the people in the world that need it. So together it's bigger than separately.
The company's vision goes far beyond the war wounded.
Our vision was to focus the remarkable energy and creativity of Israel's startup nation, to focus that energy on the needs of the people who are living at the bottom of the pyramid, people who are living with disabilities, elderly, and poor communities.
59-year-old grandfather Mikal found a leg up to help him get up in the world.
I came to this project because before I have a problem in my leg. It's very heavy for me. And now my group and my team, it's give me small legs. And now I'm climbing very fast. And I'm very happy because it's new present for me.
AT&T Foundry collaborated with the Israeli startup Wearable Devices to help this pianist.
We were able to build a model that allows Ohad to get back to playing piano using his weak hand as well, which also has rehabilitative abilities which are beyond what we expected, and we're very happy and honored to help him make his dream come true.
All of the innovative technology becomes a gift to the world.
The trick of Tom is that all intellectual property created by all Tom teams around the world is deposited in the public domain, which basically means it belongs to nobody, but it also belongs to everybody.
Within 5 years, Tom is spread to nearly 20 countries and foresees a worldwide web of partners to help the disabled. Tom is just one example of many here in Israel, living out Tikkun Olam, repairing the world. Well, that's all for this edition. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.